What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Mishmash Podcast. Today, my guest is Jon Korellis, college and high school basketball coach, special education teacher, supervisor of a special needs school, and most importantly, girl dad of two.
Yes, this is the most important.
Dude, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. Anybody who wants to listen to me for a little bit is okay in my book. So.
Well, funny enough, that's how we got started. Was we had a couple of different conversations, and I remember thinking, like, God, this would be great for a podcast because one, it was really good information that I got, good advice, like, you know, what do you call it? Here, we'll swap pens.
Oh no, I'm good.
You good? You got
Yeah,
it? So this
it's
one,
good. Yeah.
I know this one was
No, I'm good.
giving me a hard time. So in terms of how we know each other, because like I was saying, I always kind of start off with that introductory sort of deal of how I met somebody. And we met through a local basketball skills training program. And I don't know if you remember this or not. It's funny because you said that you weren't there long. And I'm a big believer in sort of like meant to be kind of things, you know, like, and I think you were the one who did Sarah's first ever session.
I remember you telling me that.
And I'll never forget it because I was so nervous for her. So Tim had already sort of blazed the trail. He'd been doing it at least for a year.
Okay.
So he was definitely like the trailblazer in the family for basketball. And Sarah was right there. Like I remember when I was coaching him in rec, you know, she would be the one that wanted to stay after and do practice and stuff and, you know,
it's good quality.
And do all that. Yeah, absolutely. And so when she started doing the skills training, I was like, oh, because at that point she wasn't as coordinated. Like Tim had a much more natural take to it.
Okay.
And so I remember like I was watching her in the first session. I was like, she's not doing too bad. And then she was doing better and better. And I remember you took like a short video or something and you posted it to Instagram. It was like the first time she had ever had like, you know, a tag like that or whatever. And you told me at the end, you were like, dude, she did great. Like,
yeah, I remember that.
Make sure she sticks with this because there's something there. And so as a girl dad, that's like a big, big deal. At least for me, you know, in terms of having somebody believe in your daughter and just, and you know, for the right reasons too. Like you saw, it didn't matter what she was wearing, how she looked. It was based just on her effort and you know, sort of her performance, I guess.
No, it was because I remember, I mean, she had, and I think she was in kindergarten.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
she was. Yeah. She had just turned 5.
Yeah, I recently told somebody the story recently. But she was in kindergarten and again, going in blind because I don't want to say that was my first time at that gym, but if it wasn't, it was pretty close to it. And I remember just being impressed with her. And I think because so she's a year older than Stella.
Yes.
Right. My oldest one. And so 5th and 6th grade. And I remember, so her being in kindergarten meant that my Stella was too small. She wasn't there yet. So I remember seeing that. And I think that's why, like, that was my first foray into like girl dad and evaluating girl talent, which now I'm recruiting for AAU, which doesn't say a lot of good things about me, but we are, you know.
No, but and that was kind of cool too, right? It's one of the things that I've learned on this journey into sports specifically is how interconnected things are, right? And so it's kind of a difficult line to run because you do meet a lot of people. I've met a lot of phenomenal people. Yeah. I've also met a lot of people I don't like, and I've been extremely careful not to burn bridges, not to voice any certain negativity because you never know. Even when somebody leaves a team or you think they're gone, it's this, you know, double helix where you come back and
and I mean, I don't want this to be filled with, you know, me telling stories, but I remember, so I played basketball in Brooklyn for a church when I was 15, 16. And because the Greek, so our Greek church league here in Jersey wasn't great. There was like only 6 of them. So somebody had asked my dad, who he played with against in the city. And it was like, yeah, we need a point guard. You know, can your son play? Like he happened to run into him. He was like, yeah, my son can play a little bit. So I started playing basketball in Brooklyn. And they started protesting that I was playing because they knew I was in Jersey. So my father, another dude that my dad wasn't really like, didn't love growing up, and I guess they played against each other, was the one protesting me hard. And so we saw him in the gym once, and my father goes, I'll go take care of this. Walks right up to me and goes, yeah, why are you messing with my kid? And he goes, oh, John, hey, what's up? He goes, I didn't know it was your son. And my father goes, he's Jon Korellis.
Yeah.
I'm Jon Korellis. Like, what do you mean you didn't know? And that was the end of it. Nobody protested me again. So in going back to like the burning bridges and that stuff, yeah, I mean, you never know when it'll come back. This came back like 30 years later.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that was a good one.
and we'll get back to the Greek roots because I had something to get to with that. And actually, I'll have to tell you about. We have another friend of Greek descent, and they're really involved with Greek basketball overseas, which is cool.
get out
so
of
I'll
here.
have to show you on Instagram. There's a couple of accounts that you might want to follow for Stella.
I would love it,
because they're interested in players over on this side. But yeah, so, and it's funny that you mentioned like the recruiting part of it because we found out about JSE, which is Sarah's new program that she thankfully joined.
Yeah.
And you were, not that you were pushing or recruiting her, but you were, I was the one that was kind of, you were putting it in our heads. And it was great because I couldn't wait to get her there. It was just one of those things where, time and I never want to overextend us or the kids because I think one of the worst things you can do as a parent is over sign up for things and then under appear, right? So like signing up for team and making none of the practices or whatever. Like my kids are never going to be the ones that don't go to practice and show up to games and that kind of crap. So I'm so glad that again, right? Fate, how things work out. Yeah. It just panned out, and thank God she made the team because I was so scared because they had the callback tryout, and there were a lot of girls there, but it's great, and she's loving it. She's doing a great job. Dawn does an amazing job.
Yes, it's a good program. I mean, I had no doubt that Sarah was gonna make the team. I did recruit her. It didn't sound like that because we're friends already, but no, I did. I didn't give her the hard sell, but I gave her the mediocre sell. No, I didn't need to give her the hard sell because she came.
But it was consistent and it worked too. And it was. I was flattered, and it was awesome. And again, that was one of the many conversations that we've had pertaining to the girls, which I think is great. And that's sort of the crux of what I wanted to discuss with you tonight because there is something special. Now, there's something special about being a girl dad. I don't know about you in terms of growing up. Like I have an older brother and sister, but I more or less grew up alone. Only child household. And so I didn't really have like younger sisters or older sisters. I
have an older sister.
You have so one older sister.
I do have an older sister who I love very much. She's wonderful, but we very much lived our separate lives while caring about each other immensely. You know what I mean? I know, put it this way, I have everybody's back and I know she's got mine. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. She doesn't say it very often, but she does.
Right. So that's awesome. So I feel like, again, being a child of the 80s, right? When I think of like girl dad or like sort of the paternal role as like a stay-at-home parent, I think of Danny Tanner, right? From Full House.
Yep.
And like, he's not exactly. Yeah. And when I have another buddy that I'm hoping to get on to have a very similar discussion. I was thinking of the three of us versus like Danny Tanner, and like we're more, I don't want to say alpha male because that's such a stupid phrase, but really more like we're sports guys, music guys, whatever it happens to be. It's a different vibe than he puts out. He had more of like a maternal sort of like vibe, and we're very much dads of girls. And so in terms of the discussion today, I was hoping we could kind of get to, I don't know, some of our like philosophical approaches to how we handle things with the girls, especially at the ages that they're coming to. Because that was some of, the stories already are pouring in.
Yeah. I'm hoping Stella can listen to this, and I don't know if we're going to go down that road where she can, she's not embarrassed.
Well, I already warned Sarah. She said something about being famous. I was like, oh, you're going to be famous after this one. It's coming up. But yeah, so Stella is. You are one of our favorite people in general, but Stella is she's one of one. She's one of my all-time favorite people.
That's really wonderful to hear. And just for, people who are going to listen to this that don't know Stella Korellis, I do get that a lot. And I don't mean that in like a touting and puffing out my chest sort of way. We were working out. So Thursday we have our girls workout. And I don't think Sarah's practice on Thursday, right? Is that?
I think so.
Yeah. So we have our girls workout for JSE after our practice, and the two coaches that help me, who are younger, not even on the younger end, they're in their 20s, and which is great that we have that good balance. And they're like, we love Stella. Oh, like she's so funny. Oh my God, I like it. But it's similar to what you're saying. Like there's no, it's hard to put your finger on it, but she's a genuine and she's a good kid.
That was the word I was going to use because she is hilarious, right? but not in like almost like in an irreverent way. But you could just tell she's got a heart of gold. She's just a great person, and so I get a lot of compliments on Sarah because she's very polite. She's a personable kid or whatever. Yes. So when the two of them linked up, it was like it was great.
And it was Roblox. It was FaceTime.
Oh yeah,
like nonstop for like a whole month. Until they forget other people exist in the world.
So the problem with Sarah is she just like. She flakes out sometimes, like, so especially with like phone stuff, like,
oh no, they all do.
Like I had somebody that texted her and it took her like a month to respond to her. Really? She's like, oh, I meant to. I'm like, well, good job. But so personality wise, it's interesting. So you have two daughters, right? So Stella is
10. She's in fifth grade. She's a young fifth grader. So she'll be 11. She'll turn 11 just about going into sixth grade. And Ashlyn just turned 9 on Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she just turned 9. Related. Yes. Thank you. So I have a 9 and a 10-year-old until August.
Oh, man.
Yeah. They're like 20, whatever that comes out to, 20 months, 22 months apart.
Right. Yeah, like Irish twins. No, Irish twins, I think, are the ones born in the same year, right?
So we wanted them to be close. And I told Lauren, my wife, that, listen, if we're going to have a second one, which the plan was a second one, but Stella was such a good sleeper, I tried to convince her to only have one and cut our losses. And I said, all right, if we're going to do it, like, and it took like 9 months before we got pregnant with Stella. So she's like, hey, how about we start trying right before Stella's first birthday? I'm like, okay. It happened then. Right. It happened right then. Like, yeah. That's what it ended up being. Yeah.
And relationship wise, do they get along? Are they, friendly, or because that sometimes that age gap being so short it can be a double-edged sword. Either they're really close or not.
So they are, I don't want to, they're close and they're probably really close. They are really, I mean, they'll say they're best friends, but they just started fighting like over the last year. So, I don't want to be like, oh, we're perfect and we're this and we're that. No, we're not perfect. They argue and they fight, but they could argue and fight at like 8:30, 9 o'clock on a Saturday. And then at 9:30, when we're like, all right, brush your teeth. They're like, are we sleeping together? And we're like, you just tried to murder each other. Like,
So it's funny. That's Jackson and Sarah. Okay. So there was a cartoon. I've used this reference 1,000 times. It was a show called Puppy Dog Pals, right? So it's these two puppies and then there's a cat. And I equate the puppies to Sarah and Jackson because that's exactly them. Fun loving, like romping around and everything. And then Tim is more his own kind of dude. He does his own thing. He's like a cat. He wants to be left alone. And it's funny because the girls are pretty different, right? In terms of like their intensity level. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about the difference?
Yeah, I would love to. So Stella Korellis is Lauren Korellis, is my wife.
Oh boy.
And she got a lot of my personality in her, and she thinks I'm funny, so she has more a dad joke approach. And it's funny, my middle school friends, who I still keep in touch with regularly, say that I was making dad jokes at 12, and then I just grew into my role, and now I'm like funny. Because now I'm a dad.
Caught up,
now it's caught up. So so that's Stella. And when I say she's like my wife is carefree. She's a hippie. If you ask her what decade she thinks she fits in better, it was the 70s. And it's just a very laissez-faire, rolls off your back, and that's Stella, which I'm great. I love, because as much as it sometimes, like, when we're talking about sports, it like gets me because she's not Ashlyn. She's not a go-getter. She's not like working. She's just not that person, right? Where she's attacking all the time. I love it because I know she's going to figure out life so well. And I think what she will epitomize one day is work smarter, not harder.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah. And like, cause she gets stuff. She gets it. It takes a little longer. She has to study a little more. But perfect example, and I don't want her to be upset that I'm saying this, but got not an awful grade on a math test recently, but not one we would love, because she didn't copy the numbers correctly from the word problem that was about 2.5 inches above the line where she writes the answer. And she was like, yeah. And we're like, well, what do you have to say about that? She goes, I'll write the numbers down better next time. And we're like, no, that's not acceptable. Right. You're going to go to middle school. And like, and we gave her the lecture of like, this is it. Like, we've let you do that in elementary school and figure it out.
Right.
It's ending now in elementary school. and then I took the iPad away for a week. But she got it back. I was half joking about the iPad thing, but
Well, and that's something we'll get to too in terms of our parenting and discipline. And I got scared when you said math test. I was like, is this the state test? Because that was the best. That's the best of all time, and that totally.
The map,
yeah, that was a good one.
So, we did read the map test wrong. So, just long story short, she clicks through buttons when it's state assessments, when it's multiple choice, and we had this problem when she was in kindergarten and first grade too, where she would be the first one done because she'd be like, "Well, you spelled Baba,"
but done in like 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Like they've wiped out her answers when it's like a Google form quiz. Before and no, go do it again.
Oh my gosh!
Not because of the answer, not because of her doing poorly, but because
she didn't actually answer it. Right?
You didn't have time to read the question, let alone answer. So, so we did find out that the map testing scores, it wasn't the percentile she was in; it was the percentile that she went up from the previous year. So she was average. She was a little above average. She just didn't increase. She increased like 5% in every area.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was much better.
Yeah.
But we did have a mini panic attack.
Right.
Because she didn't care.
No. But again, that's her. And the funny thing is, it's not like, again, she is a hard worker when she wants to. Right. And I think that's a challenge a lot of parents face with their kids is motivation. And I love how you guys handle it with her because I feel like you put the right amount of pressure in the right way. Because if you push too hard, right, then they shut down. And maybe this stems too from your education background, right? Yeah. So we're both teachers by trade. Right. And I think the best experience I have, or the best experience that prepared me to be a parent, I think was getting a master's and learning, how to work with kids. Yes. And I focus more on high school. I don't know. Are you middle school, high school?
So I'm by degree, I was actually, I had my elementary cert, but secondary social studies.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back to Rutgers when I fell in love with the self-contained setting and multiple disabilities and autism, which I was a paraprofessional for a little bit when I left the college basketball scene and the hoop group. And wanted to use my degree in education. And I was a head coach at Metuchen High School and got a job as an aide. They offered me a job as an aide in a self-contained class. And I fell in love with it. So I went back to Rutgers and got my certification in special ed.
That's great because I feel like every class, not that we took classes on it, but every classroom exercise that I had on classroom management, on dealing with, and I was teaching in Manhattan, right? So 30 kids in a classroom, like really... Like with Tim turning a teenager, like Heather was losing her mind, like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is only one. I had to deal with 30,
right.
Some had probation officers. Like it was crazy. I'm like, if I can handle that, I can handle this.
100%.
But it's important to consider how you approach things. And so that's why, like, one of the things that I thought of in terms of this discussion was like our approaches to discipline and stuff. You guys seem to employ the same philosophy that I do about communication and information.
Yeah.
It's not, and again, I love my wife. She's a great mom. In terms of discipline, that falls more on my shoulders because she's a knee-jerk reaction person. Something happens and she reacts either emotionally or instantly and not really thinking of like, okay, like perfect example, playgrounds when the kids were little.
Like, should we tread lightly though, talking about the wives?
Nope. Nope. It's all good. This is fair game. Because if I said anything she disagreed with, then I'd be in trouble. But she would back this up. But our approaches would be like, all right, we're going to go to the playground for a half an hour or something, and now it's 3:25. Yeah. Well, she would wait until 3:30 and say, all right, we're going. Let's go. Yeah. Like wrap yourself up and go. And of course, the kids balk and they whine or whatever.
Right. And you're giving a time limit.
Sometimes I would look and it would be 3:32, 3:33, but I'm like, oh crap, well they don't know. So I'd say, all right, guys, we're leaving in 2 minutes. Yeah. It might be 20 seconds later. And I'm like, all right, we got to go. And again, it's just the experience that I had in terms of like classroom management, learning how to approach certain things instead of, you don't want to be like the hammer and the anvil, right? Like you need to, be a little more flexible with it. And so in terms of like how you've handled things, because again, we're not throwing anybody under the bus, right? But like Stella and Sarah are, I hate I feel like tween just sounds like such a weird, weak thing, but like,
but they are.
Yeah, pre-adolescent so maybe. That sounds better.
And they're getting older and older by like the day.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know, like, and this is the thing, right? Like, so being in fifth grade, how far does the school go? Is fifth grade like that's the senior year for her?
She goes to middle school next.
Okay. Yeah. So for Hazlitt, they're in like 12 schools by the time they get to high school.
Yes.
It's silly. Yeah. And so right now she's in like the senior year for the upper elementaries. So she's going to be going to middle school. And I don't think she's ready for it in terms of like.
And they do 7-8? Is that what it is?
7-8. Yeah. So I don't think she knows what she's getting into, but I also have zero concern about Sarah because she's going to be aware of all the drama and hopefully involved in none of it based on personality. With Stella, I'd be curious to see.
But Stella goes over her head.
Yeah. Oh, it does.
It does. I had a little bit of a thing with the boys that I coach, the boys team that I had, which is fifth grade, ironically, the timing of that. But there was like a little like bullying going on and it was handled and the schools handle it, but I take that to heart. So I had talks with them about bullying, and also I am the anti-bullying coordinator for our district. So I feel like everybody should take that seriously. It's a huge concern I have with my students, with my kids, with their friends, everybody, being entrenched in education. And so I had to talk with them about it. And I started going home and I told the girls, I said, hey, I had some issues with the boys. I said, do you guys, anybody bullying you guys? And they're like, no. I said, all right. I said, but also on the flip side of that, like if you see somebody sitting alone on the bench at recess, maybe go up to them and say, hey, like, do you want to play? Sit down, ask them their name, talk to them. I said, because while something like that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, it might mean everything to them. And so for a few weeks, periodically, once or twice a week, I would say, did you do something nice for somebody? And Ashlyn would like give me the textbook answer. Like what I said, like, oh, somebody was on the bench.
Right.
And they had nobody to play. And I went up to them and said, would you like to play? I'm like, you're lying. That's the example I gave you.
Right.
Stop it. Not that she's a liar, but like, and it could have very, very well happened. I didn't really call her out. And I was like, okay, Ashlyn, like that, because she was 8. And I would ask Stella, no, not really. Shrug her shoulders. I'm like, okay. And then ask her again. Like, no. I'm like, like, come on. Anyway, long story short, Lauren talks to one of our neighbors who's a good friend of ours. And she goes, oh, did you hear about lunch table? I'm like, no. Boy. There was a boy, a little bit bullied. And all the boys got up and switched tables. Didn't invite this one boy in particular. Well, another boy who's a really good kid, Dylan, is one of Stella's good friends who's our neighbor. And he comes over all the time, stayed with the boy and hung out with him. Well, Stella and her friends invited them to sit with them at their table.
Wow.
Yeah, this was going on for like 3 weeks. I was asking her every day, did you do something nice for me? She's like, nah.
Right.
And I told her, I go, babe, I asked you. Did you? She goes, yeah, they just came sat at our table. Like this, like that. It just, and I think it's a credit to her personality, and I really do envy her. And this isn't me saying I raised a great kid she's just a good kid. And I don't think, she's one of those people that I feel like is gonna be tough to sell herself one day. You know what I mean? Because she's just who she is. And it's hard. She won't distinguish the good in her and the stuff that needs to improve. That's not Stella. No, it's just not her.
She's going to be take it or leave it. And there's going to be plenty of taking it though.
Yeah.
For sure.
But that's her in a nutshell. I mean, really, in a nutshell, that's her.
And so it's funny, and this is why, again, I thought of so many of the parallels between our experiences, which I didn't realize until we had these discussions, right? Like Jackson had something kind of similar where this was like 4 months into this, where it turns out that, so let me back this up. Mm-hmm. So Tim had broken his arm and was out of recess and whatnot for, I don't know, whatever it was, 6 weeks. It wasn't in the cast or anything, but he just wasn't allowed to go out to recess. Right. And so he was able to pick a friend to come and sit with him for, a certain stretch or whatever. Yeah. But every couple of days it would switch. It's not fair really for it to be the one kid. Yes. Well, it turns out Jackson was the one kid for this one kid that had some really significant health issues. Yeah. And he was with him. He gave up every recess for 4 months. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I always appreciate if we get compliments on our kids. Yeah. But it's those kinds of moments that make me proud because those are decisions that kids make. Right. That's we can tell.
And how did you find out?
From the mother of the other kid.
There you
go. And that's how you want to find out.
Because Jackson didn't think he was doing anything. He was just being a good friend.
Exactly.
Wasn't anything to write home about.
Right. And that's one of those things where I'm grateful anything, especially on the sports, right? when Sarah plays really well, like, I don't care how many points she gets. You know what I mean? Like, I look for effort. And like, thankfully, I can't really think of many instances where like any of the kids really dogged it or whatever, you know, and like their success makes me happy. And especially like, we'll talk about Ashlyn in a second, right? With Taekwondo, like when they're out there, that's on them. Like we do all the prep work that we can, we do the coaching, you know, and I think we've both had maybe a similar experience where when I started out, I tried to be too helpful, not realizing it, right? Like after games, like especially with Tim, like poor Tim had it the worst out of the three of them.
He was like, you were rolling dice with him.
Oh, I'm like,
he was your guinea pig.
Right. I'm like, all right, so here's what you, not, I never started with here's what you did wrong, but it was like, all right, we could fix this, we could do that. And like, I've realized after it wasn't working and not helping and he looked miserable and it seemed like he was falling out of love with the sport. I was like, all right, I need to do something different here. I need to do something better. And maybe that's every parent that goes through that, but I think it's important to be supportive of the kids and champion them and recognize their effort and the things that they're doing because it's their journey, right? And you know,
and I think and listen, I'm no expert in anything, but with experience with basketball and education and being around parents and being around a variety of different students, you can say parents go through that, like all parents go through that, but not all parents step back and are self-aware, you know what I mean? It can self-assess and do that, like do what you did with Tim. So I think that's where the education comes in, where you can like reflect on, you know, so here's the outcome what's the outcome of Tim, right? Whatever he was going through at that time. And you were able to like self-assess, this is what I'm doing. Maybe it's what I'm doing. And you start taking a step back and you work on different things.
Right. Well, you mentioned reflect, right? And reflection. That's one of the things that scares me in terms of bullying nowadays, right? So for me, I got bullied mercilessly as a kid. I went through all the phases, the skinny kid, the fat kid. I was the nerd the whole time. So the skinny nerd and the fat nerd, all that, right? Yeah. But it was one of those things that at the end of the school day, that was it. And now with, you know, social media, phones in general, it's really scary. And one of the things that frustrates me is I feel like a lot of the bullying behavior that we see in kids, I feel like it's a reflection on the parents, either in a couple of different ways. In some instances, they're just not really involved with the kids. And I've seen this, again, whether it's social media or just like sort of the rise of like smartphones, like some parents seem to be much more hands off. Like they're not as directly involved with the kids. The kids have their own phones. Like everybody's on their phones. You know, I remember the kids were little. We went to a diner and it was 2 adults and 4 kids. And there was 1 iPad and 4 iPhones. And they were, nobody said a word to anybody else. It was crazy to me. And I'm like, you know, and our kids were too little to have, you know, devices anyway. They didn't ask for our phones or whatever. And again, I do feel like a dinosaur sometimes in that regard where like, I feel like I'm promoting like older school, you know, values and stuff in that regard. But like, I do think that there's just sort of like a societal thing where people put less effort into, you know, having those conversations and thinking critically about like behavior
absolutely.
And stuff.
Well, first of all, there's no, being self-aware now is completely a virtue, I think, in the amount of people that I'm around, you know, constantly. I just don't think, I do think that's really a good attribute and quality to have is being self-aware of yourself. And it's not always easy, you know, it's humbling, but I think you need to be. That's one. You know, and I lost my train of thought, which will probably happen a lot going forward.
We'll redirect that.
Yeah.
Course correct. Well, yeah, no, and like that's one of the things where it's scary to me to think about the ages that the girls are getting into now, because this is where a lot of kids change. And I already talked to Sarah about this. I don't know, you know, if Stella, you had mentioned that she's got like a friend group where the interests have shifted a little bit in terms of.
Yes, Stella's immature. And I will say this. I do want to say this because I remember, but I'm back on track now.
Yeah, right.
With the device thing at restaurants, I'll never forget. I was a paraprofessional before I got my first teaching job in a self-contained class. And one of the other paras was a parent. And she was like, I'm telling you, my kid will never have a device out to eat. I won't go out to eat if that's the case. Like we're not going to, you know, she goes, oh, you say that now, you'll change. And let me tell you something. And maybe it's because Laura and I are stubborn, and we're both on the same page. Right. Parenting, like we really are. I mean, not to say we don't disagree at times, but as far as like the grand scheme of parenting,
philosophically, right,
we're good. And maybe it's us being stubborn, but they have it. They have it. You know, like we go out. First of all, I will say full transparency. We don't go out to eat that much. You know, we just don't. We're very homebodies, and we've never said, oh, we're going out to eat. We're going to the diner. We're going here. We're going there, and they're like, can I bring my iPad? Or never. never. And they know the answer is no anyway. So I think it's just a precedent you set. And I also think that also goes into like being really family oriented, because we try to talk to each other. And funny enough, my first class of my master's, and it's so weird. It's like, it's a very Slumdog Millionaire type story. Like, and my whole thought process is pretty much the same way. But I wrote my first paper on the way to Chesapeake, Virginia, to surprise a friend who was retiring from the Marines, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And me and my 3 other friends from middle school, who we hadn't seen each other really in a long time, surprised him. He just moved back from Japan. And I'm writing on my iPad, of course, because I didn't, it was easier on my iPad.
Right.
And I basically, one of a paper that I was researching for, one of the topics I was researching was the family dynamic and how important it is to have dinner. Because when you have dinner, you communicate.
Right.
And from then on, and I'm not going to say from then on we had dinner every night, because we don't, but we really try for when we're all home to do something where there's a meal. Sundays, Saturdays, Sundays, Fridays are tough, but sometimes we'll go out in between Ashland's Taekwondo. And so like, two nights a week we are. And even when we're not, the good thing is this, if we're just feeding the girls while me and Lauren are making lunches and like tag teaming it, we're all within 10 feet of each other.
Right.
They might be like over here eating, and we're over by like where your kitchen areas and making lunches and cleaning up and doing stuff like that. So we're asking how their day went, what happened today. Were you good to somebody today? That kind of, I think that's important. And I think that family dynamic kind of comes around to not even device, because we do have a good time, and we play tic-tac-toe and we play hangman, and, we do enjoy each other's company. Like I said, because we are homebodies, so we're like around each other all the time. To the point where Lauren would be like, "Oh, we have nothing to do tonight. It's like a Saturday." She'd be like, "Should we do like popcorn, smoothies, and a movie with the girls?" I'm like, "No, we see them enough. Like, can we hang out?
Yeah.
Like, can we, like it takes us like 8 months to watch an 8-episode show,
Right.
So I'm like, no, we spend enough time."
Well, it's funny you say that. First of all, it's such a huge relief to hear you say all these things, because like I said, like I feel sort of like I'm on an island in terms of our philosophy and how we handle things. So it's nice to know that at least we're not alone.
Yeah,
in that
and
regard.
I think more people are like that. I'm not saying, we're not these wonderful human beings. I think there are a lot. It's just, who brings that up in topic conversation?
No, but it feels more monolithic, right? And so this is the thing. Like, I'm reflecting on, again, the sports experiences. So that's been our primary exposure to other parents, other kids, and that's really informed my understanding, not really necessarily anything with my kids, but just my understanding of the differences. Because again, it's very easy to be insular. I'm from Brooklyn. I lived in Staten Island for a couple of years, right? Those are insular places. Like, it's very easy to kind of like just think everywhere is the same as this, and everyone is the same as you. And that's clearly not the case. And it's funny that you mentioned about the movie thing and everything. Heather and I are in kind of that boat now where, the kids are all older. Like, Jackson's going to be turning 10. He's the last single digit right now. And so we've been mom and dad for maybe longer than we weren't mom and dad, right? And so now we're kind of like figuring out how to reconnect as Matt and Heather. We're trying to go out with couples and stuff, which is cool because we never really
I've seen that on Instagram. You had a good birthday.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That was an unbelievable night. And so like it's good because, I just, again, I don't always put everything, I try not to be an overthinker, right? But like, I do reflect in terms of like what we're modeling, right? And I've always treated kids, no matter what age they are, as smaller adults, right? Like, I'm the kind of person, like, especially if it's a little kid, like I love kids of all ages, but like the little ones, where like you'd be surprised how much you can get out of like a 4 or 5 or 6 year old if you just ask the right questions, and I'm the one I'm lowering myself down to their level, so I'm not talking down to them or whatever. And so I think that to circle back to what you were saying in terms of like the household, right? Where you guys may not be eating together, but you're in the same room and you're talking. That's what adults do, like in a workplace environment, right? Like at least maybe in the break room of school. And so you're inadvertently, we're preparing them for, adulthood in simple little things like that. And I don't know, I think it's important.
I absolutely agree. I think it's just a thin line between making them your friend, but communicating with them. And that's my wife's biggest thing is like, we can love them, we can do everything together, but in the end, like, we remind them that, hey, we're not your friend. Like, you're not going to call me stupid. Mom's not bro.
Right.
I'm waiting for mom to be bruh.
Yeah.
But we're not boys. So I mean, you're going to hit, yeah.
Oh, Heather has the shirt, and Sarah's like maybe the biggest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like mom, mommy, bruh, or something like that.
Yes.
Ma, mommy,
ma, bruh.
That's so true though. No, and see, so this is funny, right? Like, and again, not throwing anybody under the bus, but like when way before we had kids, my sister, her son, he was like maybe 3, I guess. So we were babysitting him, and she gave me a lunch, right? She's like, all right, it's a turkey sandwich, it's a cookie, and like maybe like a juice box or something like that. And I remember we were at Heather's mom's house, and we are like, all right, we should probably feed him. He looks like he's getting hungry. We took him to the zoo, the Staten Island Zoo, and the whole thing. I leave the room and I come back, and Heather's like freaking out. And she's like, oh, he won't eat a sandwich. And I look, the cookie's gone. I'm like, well, what happened? She's well, I gave him the cookie, thinking like, cause he really wanted it. And like,
rookie mistake.
Right. So she was trying to be his friend, and it was adorable because she's like, well, what, Jake, why don't you eat the sandwich now? And he goes, no, I'm full from the cookie. You can have it, Aunt Heather. Like he's been really sweet about it.
Yeah.
But that was something that stuck with me in terms of like, you want to be polite with your kids and, have them, I don't want to say be friendly with them, but I know what you mean in terms of like that interaction. Like you want them to know that they can come to you, but like
100%,
you're still in charge. You're the disciplinarian.
Yes, and I think the difference is, so, and it's sometimes hard to explain, but and you already started talking about like how we speak to them, right? My students the same way. I got moved a couple of years ago, which is great because I have experience from kindergarten special needs all the way up to postgraduate 21, because they're provided a free public. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I moved to the 18 to 21, and my admin team was like, we saw you interact with the older kids, and we just think it's also suitable because I'll tell 7-year-olds now when I see them in the hall, I'm like, what up, bro? Like I honestly I just talk to them. It doesn't, I'm myself all the time. And I think I connect with kids like that. So I don't do the, oh, sweetie. And I'm not that I'm not compassionate. I'm very compassionate with my daughters. I'm always there for them. And, I'm always a shoulder to cry on. But I'm not the like, oh, tell me what you're, and neither is Lauren, which is bad because maybe one of us should be, but that's all we are. And it doesn't mean we're not tougher because of it. It's just the tone and the words we say, we talk to them like they're humans, and that's all. Like, and the best example, and not that it's a specific example, but when they mess up, we'll be like, well, that wasn't a good choice. So why wasn't that a good, and with the same look expression, like why wasn't that a good choice? Somebody could have got it, but that's exactly right. As opposed to being like oh, sweetie, like we don't do that because, like, no, that's a bad, that's a bad choice. Now, maybe you didn't know it at the time, but right now with the look on my face.
Right.
And that's how we go about it.
And just to refer back to that reflection thing, at least you're doing that because I feel like we live in the age of not my kid, right? Like where so many people, they like, I can't even imagine. I miss teaching a lot, but I don't miss having to deal with the parents in that regard. But I don't want to get on that soapbox. We'll shift.
I do have a great story for that.
Yeah. Go for it.
So, Stella gets hit, comes off the bus crying one day. Right, this is years ago. What happened? And Ashlyn was little. I think she had started school, and she was like, "Oh, so somebody hit her in the head with the lunchbox." I'm like, "Well, did the bus driver see? Did it? No. Okay, so they didn't tell him. Fine." So now, 2 years ago, I think it was, we get a phone. My wife calls me, and it was, we got to talk. Oh, this is last year. I think it was because I think I was in my current position. It was like I just moved to admin, and she said, "We got a problem." I said, "What?" I said, "The school supervisor called." And they were like going through bus footage for something, and they saw Stella hit a kid with her lunchbox. So, like, that's what she said. But the words that the supervisor used was like, I was in disbelief of what I saw, or to the point where, and it was, so I switched jobs in November. So we're coming up on the holidays. We're coming up on Christmas. And it was for Friday. So now we're not good. I mean, we're to the point where, long story short, we punished her, like whatever. And then like we started talking to friends of other people on the bus, and we felt like nobody really did their due diligence. Not that we're blaming anybody else because she's punished.
Right.
So I email the supervisor Monday morning. I'm like, listen, can we just have a conversation? She calls me and we're talking. She goes, listen, I do want to apologize because I think I don't know if she said terminology, but she said the words I used, I think made it seem more severe. I said, because I said, I need you to understand something. I said, I know I can't see the bus footage. I said, but I need to know because I'm ready to cancel Christmas.
Right.
And she said, no, please don't do that. Like, she felt bad, whatever. We understand. Okay, fine. My father lives and dies by this. We're Greek, and Greeks are very proud people. And my father would say, a Greek never forgets. It might be 300 years, but they're going to get you back. The boy she hit was the boy that hit her with a lunchbox.
Oh.
So,
retribution.
So it's a little bit, it's a little me plugging my Greekness in me, but and then how it goes to Stella, but also the fact that we were ready, we were all in because they said you don't do that, and it didn't take anything off of her. She was still punished, but we didn't cancel Christmas or my wife is Jewish, so we didn't cancel Hanukkah. They got gifts and stuff like that, but she was punished. I think we punished her for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Because it wasn't right. She shouldn't have done it. For us, like for me, the fact that it was the boy that hit her was like, Greeks don't forget.
Well, that's just it. That's one of those, that's a no man's land sort of scenario because you have to punish them.
Yeah. Oh, no.
But there's a part of you that's like, maybe not proud, but like, you understand.
It was just funny. Yeah. It was funny. We didn't want her to do it. We don't condone that. And she was, like I said, nothing changed. But I need her to tell me, like, I'm going to cancel Christmas. She's like, please do not do that. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Like, everything was going back. I was going to write a letter to Santa. Like, not this house.
Oh, my God. Well, and it's funny. And that's what frustrates me in terms of the parenting side of it, right? So for me, it was more, I'm thinking back to like when Tim played tackle football, because there was a ton of kids, a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of people watching to do, especially with the 3.5 hour practice, right? And I remember just to talk back to like the phone and devices thing, there were kids that had their own phones that I remember 2 of them were flinging them up in the air as high as they could to see who could get it higher and then letting it land on the ground. And I would never say a word to anybody's kid about anything. And I didn't, but I came close that time because I was more pissed on the parents' behalf.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it. I'm like, they're right there. Like, they can see this happening.
Yeah,
they don't give a shit.
Yeah, no.
And for me, like, again, to go back to like the old school, mentality, like I never needed or wanted growing up. We didn't have a lot, but we had enough. You know what I mean? And when I was like 9 or 10 years old, like I wanted a TV in my room, and my parents were like, "All right, you can get it, but you got to save up for it. Like we can't swing it. You save your allowance and yada yada." So that was something that I wanted to do with my kids, because I realized I'm like, the only thing I was using, the only thing I used cash for was bagels at Gems. That was it. Like they never saw the exchange of money, and it wasn't even like an ephemeral thing. It was almost like I didn't want it to be like a magical thing that like they click a button and here we go.
Right.
And so that's why like I knew I didn't want them to get phones before a certain age. And then I thought about like the Apple Watch as a great opportunity to use that as like a, sort of like a prep course. Yeah. Because it's much cheaper. They can get it. They can use it. How they treat that was going to be an indicator to me about the phone and stuff. And luckily it's worked. We're 3 for 3 basically.
I feel like they surprise you. Ashlyn actually just for her birthday on Tuesday got an Apple Watch. Because,
that's funny.
Yeah. But I think I told you they had the gizmos. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know, the gizmos were Verizon. They could have 10 phone numbers in it that could call them. They needed the app. I could track them, which was my thing. I want to know. Not that I wouldn't. Well, obviously, I wouldn't describe myself as a helicopter parent.
Right.
I don't think anybody does. Yeah. I mean, they're my pride and joy.
Right.
And like we'll have random talks like, what's gonna happen to Daddy if somebody like takes you? And they go, oh, you're going to jail. They go, yeah, why? I go, because you're going to kill that guy. Yeah. I go, right. Yeah. So she got the Apple Watch. That was a no-brainer for that one because she's so responsible. Her gizmo, the battery died because it was buy one, get one free, right? It served its purpose for 1.5 years. That's it. We knew it wasn't going to last 5 years. So the battery died. Outside of that, a couple nicks, she took care of that thing. Wore it every day, charged it. So to me, that was a no-brainer. Like, you know what? I said, I'm not spending $150 because they're not running the deal anymore. I'm not spending $150 on a gizmo. We got her the Apple Watch, which also too, when you talk to your provider, like they're always running deals. So I think we got $120 off.
Yeah. We definitely, the kids don't know that. They saved up and again, it's just one of those funny things where like they saved up and paid for it, but I just held on to that cash and then slowly worked it through for report cards and stuff. And again, you mentioned about like the hard line on not having devices when you're out, right? That's exactly what Heather and I did. Yeah. The problem was we weren't really going out to eat. We were going to lots of breweries, and after a while,
after 3, you're like, get the phone.
It's kind of boring, or whatever. But
Yes.
but at first, like during those days, like we would have them bring, like you said, like notepads. They would play games, Hangman or.
Oh my God, Lauren gets these kids journals every like Valentine's Day,
but again,
Easter, like they have journals.
And that's just it. Like you don't need to give them certain things. Like we play Boggle. I don't know if you ever heard Boggle.
Yeah.
So we play Boggle. Me, Sarah, and Jackson. We do. It's like this, nerdy math game or whatever. But they love it. Like, and so. You don't need to default to that. But what I realized, and this is, again, me trying to evolve and be, to course correct accordingly. Like they do enjoy certain video games and certain things and whatnot. And it's pretty limited. Like mostly it's on the Nintendo Switch. So I'm able to monitor.
Oh, we do family game nights on the Switch. Like it's awesome. Yeah.
And so like I've learned, like I've had to back off a little bit, especially. So like, again, I've probably said this 1,000 times. Like when I was like 8 or 9, I was super immature playing with, action figures and shit. Like on a Thursday night, at that age, I'm probably playing till 8 o'clock and then I'm in bed before 9. Meanwhile, here's Jackson going down, to Belmar for the Brian Lynch, skills session.
Yes.
We finished that. We're shooting straight over to Marlboro to get him to go up strong practice and then going somewhere else.
Right. So it's hard to take it away from him, right? Is that,
And it's one of those things, he gets home and it's just like, really, like, do I want to be a jerk and say, no screens or whatever? I'm like, just take
Got
it.
to. Yeah.
And again, but there's stipulations. Like, as long as the effort's there and the performance is there on the sports side, and more importantly, school. That's what I have it tied to. But I feel like this is a good jumping off point to go in a Greek direction, sort of, I think. And also thinking about role models and stuff for the girls, right? So obviously they have their moms and they have us as dads, but they also have other people that they look up to. And for Sarah specifically, like she has dreams of being a professional basketball player. And however ridiculous that might be on its face, it's something that I endorse and support because why not, right? Like, again, it's more about being realistic about the expectations and the work that you're going to have to put in. And wherever you wind up, you wind up. But we watched a certain documentary.
Oh, I didn't know if this is where that was going.
And I was floored. Like we were riveted by this piece of work. And I came to find out that there's sort of a personal connection to that.
So my cousin, Kristen Lapis, put that whole thing together. And when I say, I knew about it from point A, not that I had anything to do with this, isn't like but knowing about something from point A to point B, because, so Kristen Lapis went to BC, got an internship at ESPN, met her eventual husband at ESPN as interns, and then now is off and doing, and working for another connection she made who was at ESPN. And so she left ESPN. Doing this, and Russell Donalo is still there. I'm sorry, she's Kristen Donalo.
Oh, okay.
And Russ is still at ESPN. So they don't do a good job of filling us in on what they're doing because for whatever reason they think it's bragging, and it's not. Like we want to know.
Right.
So I knew about the Giannis thing from like the minute she went to Greece and was trying to not track down his people, but there was they didn't really understand, or Giannis didn't understand from what she tells me what the piece was really going to be, and she had to get to him first.
And that's a separate one, right? Because there was the WNBA one that she did.
She's doing that right now,
right,
with Caitlin Clark.
Oh, she's doing another one.
I'm sorry, Dream On. Oh, that's the one you're talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
because you said the Greek thing.
Right. So she's actually been involved with not one, not two, but like a few big time like actual documentary productions.
So she has, if I'm counting correctly, I think she was up to 5 Emmys.
Wow, 5 Emmys nominated for, or 5?
No, 1.
That is,
yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's unbelievable.
Her first one, Stella, was like 2. I have a picture with the Emmys bigger than Stella sitting down.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's cool. So anyway, yes, the Dream On one was fantastic, and we watched that
because that was the one that was about the women's dream team.
I'm sorry,
and how it progressed into the WNBA.
Into WNBA. So the Dream On was the women's dream team, but knowing that was basically like that world tour that they went on. That was obviously heavily. The first part I think was a lot of that. Yeah. And the second part, how that was really the jump off of the WNBA for the NBA to see, will this work?
Right.
And it did. It does. And so I'm sorry. So yes. So Dream On was I mean, forget it. That was fantastic. That was her last piece with ESPN.
Right. And so the Giannis one, did it come out yet?
Oh yeah, no, it's on Amazon.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, there was a big premiere. We went to
attended, right? Yeah.
The premiere was in New York. I even saw the Dream On premiere was at the Hulu Theater.
That's so wild.
No, she's great. I mean, she's a great storyteller, and I one day I hope to see like the behind the scenes, because I mean how she formulates that with her team. I mean, and her team too. I mean, to give them credit, they all deserve immense credit. But yeah, just to see that, like to have that vision, and then it happened, and then for specifically for the Giannis thing, because she talks about this in interviews, and I mean she told me too. We talked about it, but they flew out to Milwaukee to show the family the final product.
That's got to be nerve-wracking, no matter how well of a job you think
nerve-wracking, but then she said, to see them overcome with emotion, because the father had just passed away, and that was and she said, I think that was new to her. So I mean, then she talks that up, immensely.
I can only imagine. And I mean, you see just on the surface how tight he is with his brothers and family-wise.
It's a Greek thing.
But I was just going to say,
it's Philotimo.
Is he Greek and Nigerian?
So I believe. Now I don't want to mess up. I believe he was. Yes, he's African descent.
Right.
They immigrated to Greece.
Right.
Yes.
But you could tell, like he's
he's all in. He's all in.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean. Like, so for me, like I'm a mutt of, the typical whatever, 1,000 things. And I was correct. Put it this way. I've always identified more with my Irish roots than anything else.
Yeah.
When I found out when I was like 8 or 9 that my last name was German, I remember crying because I'm like, does that mean I'm not Irish kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so again, thinking of our Greek friend, Nick, like I appreciate I don't know, just like the family tightness. It's one of those cultures where family means everything, right? It means more than anything. But everyone's like your family. Like in general.
I do want to talk, since I brought it up. So it's and the Giannis documentary, he brings this up a lot, and there's a segment on it. It's called Philotimo, and it's a Greek word, and you can Google it. There's no translation, and it's and I don't want to mess it up. But it's like love for your brother, like your brethren, your country, and it's just that, and a great part in the documentary. And this is the best example you can give for you to understand what Philotimo is before Giannis signed his long-term contract with the Bucks. I think the story was either the GM or the owner was really nervous, and he had a Greek friend, and they were having a conversation. He said, he's going to re-sign with you. And he said, well, how do you know? He said, Philotimo. He goes, Greeks have Philotimo. He goes, he's not leaving you.
Right.
And he resigned.
Oh, that was the more recent one, right? Like
that was the first long-term contract. Okay. Yeah. When after his rookie, I think it was when he was locked in that he was a Buck.
Right.
That's the story goes that's what he had a Greek friend, and that's what he said. He goes, no, he's going to sign with you Philotimo because of Philotimo. Greeks have Philotimo.
Yeah. Love and loyalty. That's I guess how I was thinking of it too.
Yeah, but you can't translate it. It's weird. It says there's no translation to any other language.
And so you said that she's doing another one.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah. No, we can talk about it because she posted on Instagram. She was actually when Iowa won. Oh my God, are they the Big 10, Big 12? What are they?
I can't.
Yeah, what is that? Iowa win? It's one of those Power Fives.
It's changed, yeah.
It's the Big 15 now, whatever. But she was out there for when they won, and there's a picture of her with Caitlin Clark and the crew.
Oh, that's
because they were filming. Yeah, they were filming it. So, and it's, I believe, because I saw the advertisement for it. They're following like 4 different players, and she was doing Caitlin Clark.
Oh wow! Sarah's gonna lose her shit when she hears that.
Yes.
Which, by the way, so funny. So, it's completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Like, so they're big on like their birthdays. So Jackson wanted to be number 22. He got it for Hazlitt, but like, I mean, we gave up on the whole numbers thing a long time ago. Like, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
They've had a bunch of different ones. And it was funny because then Sarah wound up being 22 for the Aces, whatever, from the get-go, I think.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even think of it until when she joined JSA. Like, Dawn had asked, give me two or three numbers or whatever. We'll see what happens. And it didn't even dawn on me that, like, that's Caitlin Clark's number. Like, maybe there's going to be other girls that want it. And it didn't register until we went to the first tournament when she got her uniform. She runs off to the bathroom and changes really quick, and comes back out, and it's the same Iowa colors.
And
it's 22. And I was
didn't even
like,
think about that.
holy shit. Like, this is
that?
really, really cool. And just to like nerd out for a second, like, obviously you see this is not professional by any stretch here, right? Like my setup and everything. And this is more just like, the whole purpose of this podcast is that I have a huge array of interests, right? And just different things that I kind of dabble in, like jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, right? And so it's funny that you say that about like a behind the scenes thing, because that's what I was thinking about, like watching how she put the footage together, all the decision making that goes into it, the quality of it. And she did, and I don't mean to like sort of fanboy out on her this. Like,
I do it.
She was able to tell a really compelling story, right? And I'm sorry, again, just to refer back to the WNBA one.
Yeah.
That was Dream On, right?
Yes, Dream On.
Okay, so it was a really compelling story just to begin with. It's like so like Heather and I were like,
and you don't realize it, right? Like you just watched the games.
It was just, but we were going, because how many parts was it? Was it
3?
It was 3 parts. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember like we were just gobbling it up. And like you said, like it usually we'll watch a show and like no matter how great it is, it's like, we should watch another one. All right. And a week later, now we're on episode 2, a month later, episode 3. We could not stop watching. It
was going,
one.
yeah.
And it's so cool to think about when that was released and to look at the landscape and how it changed. So like, obviously I'm a big Miami Heat fan. I have a Miami Soul like magnet on the fridge.
Oh, nice.
Like they were around for, a split second. Right. Yeah. And it goes back to the genesis of the WNBA. Like it really was an experiment. Like nobody knew how it was going to go, and it didn't really go all that well to begin with in terms of the reception and everything. It was not that it was the wrong time. Society itself wasn't ready to get up to speed, I think. And so just looking at what she did timing wise, like she was it came out at the perfect time, her documentary, because it was when I felt like there was a shift. I don't remember specifically. I want to say it was a year or two before that, where they were talking about the men's tournament and the women's tournament for the NCAA. Yeah. And somebody posted a picture of one of the female players of their weight room.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And it was like a joke. It wasn't even.
I think Dawn Staley was she the one that hit that head on?
I think so. Yeah. And just the disparity, the discrepancy. And I remember there was a general indifference by mostly men, but like just a lot of people in general. Like they were like, well, it is what it is kind of thing. And I remember getting into arguments with guys about this, and it was like, well, it's the advertising dollars and they don't bring in the money and blah, blah, blah. Fast forward just a couple of years now, and like there are WNBA teams that have to move their games out of their home arenas that they've played in for whatever, because Caitlin Clark is such a draw.
Yeah, they're doing that in LA, I think, right? Is it the Spark? Are they?
It's crazy. And the best part was like I was at a buddy's house and we were watching the men's tournament, talking about the women's games. Like we were having beers, talking just about the women's games.
We watched them.
And it's not just us. Like even the kids. Jackson could probably name more female basketball players for D1 than guys.
So you know what I think it is? First of all, I think that people forget that everything is a process. You know what I mean? And it's hard to catch lightning in a bottle. And I forget who it was I was listening to speak about women's pay. And I think it was Kelsey Plum. And I think she was saying that it's not that we think we should be paid what the actual dollar amounts they're getting paid, but the percentages. Like they're not getting a piece of their jersey sales. Unless Caitlin Clark's negotiating her own deal with that, which I don't even know if it's legal.
Right.
Their collective bargaining agreement doesn't allow them to get a piece of jersey sales. So they said that's something that we're going to correct the next time. But and I give her a lot of credit for saying this, because she said, if I'm getting it correct, that we are further ahead than the NBA was 30 years into its inception.
Oh, that's a good point too.
So they're moving quickly, but it's everything is a process. And listen, it's getting better now. Now, I don't mean the quality is getting better. I'm saying the reception of it is getting better. I think Caitlin Clark's going to help. I think that whole draft class is going to help a ton.
Unbelievable.
There was way more. It wasn't, so that whole, the UConn, South Carolina, Iowa, like that LSU draft class is going to help, and I think we're going to start seeing things change. I mean, because you know what happened? I think the best thing for the WNBA was that this is completely off the cuff. I've had no in-depth discussions about this. NBA is not my thing. Just at first thought, probably the dunk contest sucking probably helps the WNBA, because so what is not that there's not dunking in the NBA, but the game has become more of what? You're either 2 feet from the basket or you're 80 feet, 40 feet from the basket, right? And that's what Caitlin Clark brought. She's pulling up from the logo. She was Steph. Like, she just looked like Steph Curry at Davidson.
Right.
On his run. You know what I mean? So that's what piqued everybody's interest. And then, thank God, I think the thing that we're all lucky about being girl dads is that there was also help around her, right? Because she didn't win.
Right.
You know? Now, we know why I mean, to her credit, I mean, we know why. She stayed home and she did something that nobody does anymore.
Right.
She stayed home to play for her hometown. You know? She would have started at UConn. She would have started at LSU. She would have started at South Carolina. They're saying she would have started all those schools for soccer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they said she was a freak soccer player and stopped her sophomore year of high school. Freak, they said. I think she scored 25 goals as a freshman.
Oh, my God.
Something crazy.
Right.
And the story I saw was she put it in from like 25 feet out also. So like one time. Like, I mean, I'm sure that's like a little lore,
right.
And it only happened once, but they said like she was bombing it from deep too.
But still, right. I mean, so the stat that blew me away more than any other, and I mean, she had countless numbers that were just ridiculous, was her makes. She made, I want to say it was 56, over 56% of her makes came from 26 feet and out, like, which is several feet out beyond the line. Yeah. And you mentioned like Steph Curry, right? Caitlin Clark became a spectacle in the same way that Steph is. Like, must see.
Yeah.
The last two things I can think of were LeBron. I remember going to see LeBron when the Nets were in Jersey. Okay. And it was like a random, Tim was like just born. So this was like 2010. Yeah. So maybe his last season in Cleveland. Okay. 2009, whatever it was. And somebody was like, you got to go early, go for the warm-ups because he does these crazy dunks and stuff. And I can't tell you how many people were there. There were more people than I'd never had ever seen at a Nets game just to watch him dunk. And I feel like now that's Steph Curry, Caitlin Clark, like in terms of like 3-point shooting. And this has come up in a couple of different episodes, right? But like, it used to drive me nuts when people would talk about the women's game, right? And it was, I guess the intention was pure. It was always meant to be a compliment. The fundamentals, they're so fundamentally sound. Yeah. It wound up to me just becoming a backhanded compliment. Like, what you're really saying is they can't dunk. There's no flashiness. The athleticism, quote unquote, isn't there. And I feel like that there's been a shift in that conversation away from that kind of thing now. You don't really hear it as much. Like, it's more
not after this tournament. I mean,
no, but even a year or two ago, like, it's maybe partly because of UConn, like their run and whatnot, but still. The point is the NBA has shifted now where, I mean, you have like Wemby shooting 3-pointers, right? Like, it's a different game. And so I think that there's less of an emphasis on the showiness. Like, of course it's still there. It's going to be a part of the NBA forever because that's just the nature of the beast. But in a weird way, it's almost like the women's game, I don't want to say caught up to the men's game, but like they've met in the middle in terms of like how it's played.
I think it's the dynamic of it's more like the dynamic of the game. You know, it's but that too, right? Because, you know, and when we talked about like the training and where I met Sarah, the philosophy of that training and then you know, Hoop Lab, I know you had Zach on, who's fantastic. You know, what that training taught me was we train to the top tier player of that session. Right. And then we make the other ones catch up, which is why you lose some along the way from intimidation and you know, embarrassment. And but that's what you got to do. So I think that's what these girls were doing, right? They saw a product and they started training to be that product. But also too, and not to get too like basketball coach, I don't think people understand when you add that element to the game where you're pulling defenses out. Like when you have to go guard Caitlin Clark at 30 feet, 35 feet, or right over half court, you're pulling out the defense even further. And we talk about it now with Stella's team, her AAU team. You know, when it's a zone for sure, even when we start our offense, we tell them start the offense just inside the NBA 3, and we tell them where it is. Because either nobody's going to guard you out there, so you have room to maneuver, right, to pass. Now somebody's not on top. The closer to the 3-point line you get, the more the defense can be on you because they're staying home. And if you do pull them out and they come guard you at the 3-point line, well, you're one quick step away from being in a wide open court at the 3-point line where people have to come and help, and now there's open people, you know, or if they're down, then you're looking and we can run our offense. So it's a win-win. So I think from like the X and O standpoint, That's what it did too, because it's not just Caitlin Clark hitting threes. You're making the defense do something that they hadn't had to do in a women's game before. Guard somebody beyond the NBA three, guard somebody the logo,
Right. And look at just in terms of how she's getting open, the screens that are being set. Like it's double screens. It's so much more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's just different from what people I think stereotypically view the quote unquote women's game as.
So can I tell you something? So I love college basketball so much more than the NBA. And I have a friend who's in the NBA. I won't mention his name because his good friend is JJ Redick, and JJ doesn't mention his name on his podcast. So I'm like, I'm not. Yes. So I'm not going to do that. But every year I'm like, I'm going to get into it. And I try, and it's getting better, just different. And now the college game is getting different, and really being locked into the women's tournament this year. That's my coaching style, right? Like getting, and so Kristen's dad is Steve Lapis, who's my godfather, and our dads grew up in Washington Heights together since they were like 4 years old, best friends. And he's a big X's and O's guy. And I have and one thing he taught me, and it's the crux of what I do on the basketball court, is the screener's the forgotten man. Right?
Always, yeah.
So he used to play these games, and we try to do it now. But because since I stopped coaching boys AAU, and not that it has anything to do with boys and girls, we'll do it again when the girls are older.
Right.
It's just that I went from coaching high level, 8th grade, high school, back down now to where I'm coaching girls, and I started 3rd grade,
younger girls, right? Yeah.
So, but I remember Lap telling me, my godfather, telling me that he used to play games with Kerry Kittles when they were at Villanova.
Oh wow.
And so they play 5-on-5, and this is literally like us sitting at a table. I drove to Westchester, PA, where he was living when I got the job. I got my high school head coaching job, and we sat down for like 2 hours, and I still have his playbook that he gave me.
Cool.
So we sat down. He showed me Rolly Massimino's 1-2-2 defense and what he did. He showed me his 1-3-1 and all of his different variations that I do to this day, and his motion offense. And he told me about the screeners the forgotten man. And what he said he did with Kerry Kittles was they would say, only Kerry can score. So they play 5-on-5. And he would say, only this guy can score on this team, and only this guy can score on this team. Get him open. And then he would play games where like, okay, now everybody can score, but you have to set a screen first. You have to like score off of a screen. And those are games he played. And when I was coaching high school, we would play those games. And so anyway, but just going back like to the whole the WNBA and the women the girls college game, they are running more X's and O's, because if they took away Caitlin Clark, well, she had to get her open, right? So you're running her through 2 and 3 screens, and then but then you're not just gonna wait for Caitlin to get it and be able to pull it if you get her daylight. No, you're gonna run guys off screen the screener, girls, you're gonna roll to the basket, you're gonna do a bunch of different things, and people don't realize, and I think high school coach, although we're riding high on high school coaches because of Danny Hurley and Kevin Keats and those guys that just had a crazy, and Nate Oates, right? Those were all high school guys.
Right.
So there are high school guys that can coach, but there's a lot that don't realize what you can do and how to get guys open. And I mean, that's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah. And so you referenced skills trainings and stuff, and Zach, right? So Zach and Gary over at Hoop Lab do a really great job, I feel, of preparing kids in general. But Gary especially, his daughter is a D1 player. She was at Kent State.
And he coached a little more too, I think, Gary.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And so he's kind of like the girl whisperer. Like he just finds a way to break through with some of these girls and the funny thing is of all different positions, right? So we refer to girl Peyton over to him. She's more of like a power forward center, and he just really helped her to develop, and that development in general I think is huge. Like, is it Juju Watkins on USC? I'm trying to think.
Oh yeah.
So if you watch her handle the ball, it doesn't look like what you stereotypically think of as, a girl dribbling or whatever, right? And that was another bullshit thing, like growing up, right? You throw like a girl. That was meant to be an epithet or whatever. And now I feel like, especially like whether it's flag football or, just there's so many instances where the athleticism, the female athleticism, I think, is viewed differently than it was in the 80s and the 90s and stuff.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. And so the point being, I think that in basketball specifically, skills training has really helped a lot of these girls to develop, especially ball handling and just how they move and stuff. And I think it's a great, I know I'm grateful that we have guys like you and Zach and Gary, you know, and Sarah's coach Dessner, Dawn, like all these great resources to help these kids to develop, but especially the girls, because it's important. Like they need it.
So it's funny. So, Stella plays and she works hard and she likes it. She is on the younger side, right? She has teammates who are turning 12 in October.
Wow.
And she turns 11 in August. So it's an uphill battle for her. And just going back, because I wanted to mention this earlier in the podcast, my goal for Stella, first, I have no goals for Stella. I want her ultimately, I mean, same thing that you want for all three of your kids, right? I want her to be happy, healthy. I wish her nothing but success. And I'm trying to, just do the best I can as a dad, which we don't know, right? We had these little humans and then all of a sudden we're a dad and there's there's books, but there's no book.
Right.
So, I just want her to be happy and she likes it. And I think she likes it now because it's dad's there. Right. And I think she likes that I demonstrate. I think she likes that I still got it a little bit. Well, I never had it, but I have it more so now.
You still got it. I've seen you shoot.
So I think she likes that. So she still likes it, even when even when we don't have a good practice. Because on the way home we talk about it, and But for the longest time, for a whole year, I asked her if she likes it, because if she didn't like it, I wanted her to stop. I didn't want her to do it for me.
Right.
And so we're not there yet. Lauren and I do think that it might come one day, and to be prepared for it. But all I need her to do, if she likes it and she wants to work at it, I can make her good. And I'm not saying that I'm this great thing. It's just that I'm entrenched in this, right? I do player development. I didn't like where my player development was going 5 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago now. So that's why I went into what Zach does and do all that training. And I really got into, Zach's 10 years younger than me. So I kind of went back to the well, so to speak, where I learned a whole new way to develop players just because I was stale. I was doing the same stuff over and over again for 10 years and I didn't like it.
The self-reflection again, right? Which is great.
Yeah. So anyway, so when I say like I can make Stella good is if she gives me the time, you can, because she is somewhat athletic. She's still growing into her body. My wife is pushing 5'7". Stella's got her body type. So, she has some stuff there. So if she wants to do it, she can. It's just like I said, it's a little uphill battle now. Whereas if she was on the 4th grade team, she'd be middle to higher pack height, and she'd get her shot off and be able to build confidence. So that's what I say. As long as she likes it, I can help her. But going back to what you're saying about the training, yeah, I mean, when you have guys that know what they're doing, I was lucky growing up because my father played at City College in New York, 1,000 points in high school, so he knew how to shoot. So I took that not that I took it for granted, but I thought everybody had a dad that knew how to shoot. And then when randomly, I remember my godfather's dad's funeral, like friends from, Washington Heights came and they asked me, like, do you shoot like your dad? Like they were like, yeah, your dad was an unbelievable shooter. You know what I mean? So I didn't realize that people don't have that.
Right.
And now people pay me money to do that,
Yeah. No, it's cool. And I love the visual there that you were referencing, right? And this is kind of what I was getting at before, like in terms of role models, right? Yeah. Like I think my kids are spoiled to have guys like you, and again, Dawn is a great example. Like what she's done. I think there was a graphic or something that Heather shared with me today on Instagram.
I saw that,
right? Of just her unbelievable accomplishments, not just of herself, right? Not just Dawn's own coaching record and whatnot, but like all of the D1 players, all these things. That's a team effort, right? And you have to, as a player, be committed to to a school like that and to a program like that. But it's sort of symbiotic, and it's great that our girls have men and women that they can look up to, shepherding them. Because I think I think it's important to have representation. So for them to see a coach like Dawn or players like Caitlin Clark or whatever. But they also need the offset of us, right? Because we bring something different to it. Like you said, like she likes that you're there. It's important that we show up for them.
Yes.
Even if we want to hand them off to,
Yeah. Well, I didn't do a middle school training this spring that I always do and plan to do because I was just doing too much with the girls and I didn't have time. And I was going to sacrifice one of that because the way I say it, and I say this to Lauren a lot, and even parents who ask me to do more and I can't, and I have to say no at some point because, so listen, for 22 years almost, I was there for other people's kids. I got to be there for my kids now.
Absolutely.
And then going back to role models, because I know that's why you brought up Kristen. Yeah, I mean, Kristen's like a sister to me. I've known her since the day she was born. And so many times, and regardless of awards and things like that, but whenever, Stella and Ashlyn read an article and things like that, like I'll text her, say, I'm so proud of you, not because of the awards, but because, you just give my girls a different avenue of somebody to look up to, and not saying that they're going to go into broadcasting or that they're going to be you or that they want to, but you're a prime example of that they can do anything. And I don't hold them back from doing anything. And also too, I want to say this earlier, with having two girls, people say, do you want a boy? I'm like, I can do it. I can do the same with my girls. And also too, like I said, if they don't play, Ashlyn, I know we mentioned it and we haven't talked about Ashlyn anymore, who I love to death. She's amazing, but she's big into Taekwondo. And so basketball's number 2.
Right.
Like, and I don't have a problem dealing with that because, Master Sonny Park, who, Park's Black Belt of America, they're all over the place. His dad was wild. His dad's wild. His dad's our dad's age. His dad's like 70.
And still going.
So we were at a tournament like this year, and I go, and it was, my dad got sick recently and recovered and he's okay. But I said, your dad looks amazing. He goes, yeah. He goes, if you tell him right now, I forget how he said it. He goes, he'll drop and do 100 thumb push-ups right now.
Oh my God.
I was like, what? So anyway, this family's fantastic that runs this, and we're lucky enough that we're in Freehold, and that's their like home base one because they're in Howell.
Right.
So they're there all the time, and we've gotten close with them. They love Ashlyn. She is, I mean, when I tell you a worker, I mean that kid works like I've never, and I've been around kids for 20 years. I don't know if I've seen a kid work like she works.
And what I love too is, again, that not discrepancy, right? But not having a book for parenting, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be difficult to be. Let me back up. I respect how you approach and how you speak about both of your girls because they are so different. Right? And so Ashlyn she sounds like type A, like, all in and all that, right?
She not bullies. I don't want to say that,
right?
But she bosses Stella around. We tell Stella, like, don't listen to her. Like,
right. So different personalities and whatnot. So the fact that you're able to support them both and with such a variety of interests, because Stella swims, right? She was doing that
they both swim now because it's easy. It's 2 blocks away, and because of where we live, we have a swim club membership. So yeah, they both swim,
right?
Which is great muscle wise. Yeah.
Exactly, but. It's funny. I've been talking with some people about this with Tim recently, right? Like as a teenager, like I don't have any experience with parenting teenagers, but I've taught a lot. I've coached kids and stuff. So, there's some experiential background there. And how I was describing my like mental approach is, when they're younger, I try to be out in front, right? And try to lead by example and try to like not tell them the direction to go in, but show them, hey, these are the different avenues we can take. But now I'm kind of done shepherding, and now I find myself more behind Tim, letting him forge his own path, right?
Yeah.
And really just either course correcting or just kind of giving nudges in different directions and stuff. And so what I love about that is I treat all the kids like that, and it sounds like you do with the girls too, you and your wife, because you want them to find their own things. You want them to to do it because they're going to be so much more invested in it than if you're like, oh, you're going to do dance or you're going to do this or that.
So, and when Lauren was pregnant and she was like, our kids don't have to play basketball. I go, no, they don't. They don't have to play basketball. I said, but just so you understand, and this goes back to the whole my godfather thing. They were both into basketball, and Kristen ended up playing field hockey in high school. But so, Lord, they're going to want to initially because that's what daddy does. You know what I mean? And they're going to see me. They're going to watch game, and they did. So they do. And I don't know how long it's going to last, but they do.
Which it's funny you say that though, because I do know a lot of guys who had those expectations. Funny enough, more with their sons than their daughters, where they were football guys. Yeah. It seems to be more of a football thing. Yeah. Like I'm going to have 2 football players in the house, and they wind up with 2 kids that are into math. They're mathletes. Yeah. They're chess kids. They're artsy. Like So I never took it as a given that they would love basketball as much as I do. And it's funny, they actually love it more than I do. And I think it's because they came to it on their own. Like, so it's a passion that we share, but it's not something I ever drag them towards. And I say that.
Well, you can't, you know.
Well, I say that because the first picture of Jackson that I think we ever shared, he was in like the little plastic bassinet thing at the hospital. So a day old, and he's got the Miami Heat newest fan sticker there. So maybe there wasn't like a lot of agency with certain things. By that point, I was like, all right, the other two are Heat fans. Like, I'll get one more. You know? But like I do think it's important as dads to be role models for our girls, just because they're our kids. And that's the thing. Like, I try not to treat the kids any differently. Two boys and a girl. To me, they're all my kids. You know, and I say that, but I do try to do maybe a little more with Sarah because, you know, it's just society's so different now. And I'm so glad that you're here talking to me about all this stuff, because I wanted to do sort of a series on parenting and just how different it is now versus when we were kids, right? Like the stereotype of like the stay-at-home mom and even the working mom back in the day, the types of careers that they had. I know some women now who have made the transition from being stay-at-home moms to running multi-million-dollar companies and things like that. That representation and that leadership, I think, is so important. And, you know, with Sarah, I'm just thinking of it recently. Like, I have to put together we have like a little tent thing that we were using for storage, and it got all ripped up. So I bought, you know, from Wayfair, like some shitty shed thing. She's gonna help me put it together. She's gonna use the tools and stuff. I have to repair the concrete in front of the shed. I just learned how to do that. I'm gonna teach her how to do it. You know, and like, of course, I'll show the boys and teach them, but why not expose them to it too? Because, you know, you never know. I don't know.
It's funny you say that, because I just had to fix both our screen doors. I know you have a puppy, a big puppy. Maui, our dog, who's 3.5 now.
What kind of dog? Oh
God, the girls love to say, because we did the DNA or whatever it is. My wife did, because it's her pride and joy. He's like 1% Mexican street dog and like 1% wolf. But he's mostly like Akita, American Staffordshire Terrier. Like, you know, he's a mix. Good looking dog. But so he ripped our screen doors. So I literally just got around to fixing them. And Stella helped me with one. And that one was perfect. And she didn't help me with the second one. We were getting ready to go to my in-laws and she was dressed already. So that one's like a little, it's not as like taut. It's not like it's a little looser. So anyway, but I wanted her to help me because I wanted her to see, I want her to see, because I want her to know how to do certain things, that you can do a lot of things, but also, and I'm not saying this any like generational thing. Like, I'm not saying this is where I don't want her to marry like a soft guy. And I'm not a manly man. I'm not a fighter. A little bit. I mean, I'm not bashful, but you know, I'm not like the manliest guy. I'm not.
No, but you're confident. Like,
there's. But and I do, and the only thing, the stuff I do around the house is just because I don't want to pay anybody for it. You know. And like, I grew up, my dad, like my father grew up in Washington Heights. And one day we were changing a light bulb when when he saved enough money, we were able to move to Middletown and out of like an apartment. And we didn't live in a great area. And he's changing a light bulb. I go, Dad, where did you learn how to do this? Because it clicked, like I was like 11 or 12. And it clicked with me that this guy grew up in an apartment building. You know what I mean? Like, how did he learn how to change a light fixture? And he looks at me and he goes, because when you don't have any money, you got to do it on your own. You got to figure it out. That's what he said to me. And that's what I've been doing. Like, I've renovated rooms. I mean, listen, I have a wonderful friend who's turning 60 in August, but he's like my best friend. And we met, he's my neighbor. Oh, that's cool. We're great friends. And he's like a general contractor. He does side. So he oversees a lot of my projects now that are bigger. So I have the confidence doing that. But no, same thing. I just want them to know what, you know, and not that, again, I'm an educator. I want everybody to be their own person. I want them to be who they are. But, you know, I want my daughters to be able to take care of themselves. But you know, my wife and I take care of each other and ourselves, right? Like, Lauren doesn't need me. You know, I probably need her more than she needs me. Right. You know, she'd be happy to write a check for somebody to redo the stairs. Right. You know, I'm not going to allow it, but, you know, so, and she kind of alludes that, you know, like, you know, how much money I have saved. She goes, I'll just pay somebody. Like, she don't care.
No, it's funny though, because like, so I grew up, my dad owned a house for my brother and sister, and then half brother, half sister. So separate marriage, that whole thing. And so by the time I came into the picture, my mom we were renting. And so I grew up in a rented house. I moved from there. Heather and I rented a duplex in Staten Island. So I wasn't able to do anything. Like I wasn't allowed to do a lot of stuff around the house. So I was terrified when we bought the house here because Heather's looking at me like, oh, this broke. And I'm like, okay. Like,
dude,
I don't want to, well, that's just it. Like at first my initial instinct was, oh, I'll pay somebody to do it. Right. But then the finance guy in me was like, oh, really? Like, you know, that's going to be this and that.
No.
And so that's where YouTube is great, by the way, like learning to do it. But I may have to hire you and Stella because I can't show you now because I got the screens down. I love the dog. She hates fucking birds. And she just, it looks like, you know, The Shining.
Oh, yeah. Oh, easy.
Both stuff.
Easy money. It was really easy.
So, yeah. So I'm definitely going to have to pick your brain on that.
But but you have to do that. Like, again, it's twofold. I want them to be independent, but I don't want them to be overly independent. Like, I want, it's funny. And you were saying about, you know, I forget exactly what you said that made me think of this, but every time I make a bad dad joke at home and they don't laugh, they're like, oh, it's such a dad joke. And Stella will laugh at me.
Right.
Ashlyn, even when she thinks it's funny, will really try hard not to laugh.
Right.
Because she wants, you know, she's like Team Lauren.
Right.
She's Team Lauren. And so whenever it's like a really bad one and they make fun of me for the bad dad joke that I just, I'm like, yeah, guess what? Who do you think you're marrying?
Yeah.
You're marrying somebody like me. I go, this is everything that you're going to be attracted to. So good luck.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Because that's how it is.
And I think that's probably a perfect topic to close out on is the looming dating days and everything. Like I tell everybody, like Sarah has room in her life for two boyfriends. One's named Spalding and one's named Wilson.
Yeah.
And I don't see those relationships going away anytime soon. So I'm not ready. And that's one of those things like emotionally, I know I'm not ready to deal with that. But then at the same time, it's also a responsibility that I take incredibly seriously. One, I've tried to model what I feel a good guy is, you know, and I hope that she has enough, like, because this is the thing, right? Everybody goofs like, oh, you're going to need, you know, like a baseball bat or whatever, you know, like something about like, you know, the shitty boyfriends. And I'm like, yeah, I have that in me. But at the same time, if I do my job right as a dad, she's going to have enough self-respect not to go for those guys. I hope.
I hope so. I hope you're right. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's going to be bumps in the road, and I'm ready for that. So I think we do have to be prepared for that. As far as like the bat and the weapon, I don't think if anybody wrongs my girls that I'm going to need anything but my hands.
Right.
You know, like the thing I tell them, I go, one of us is going to go to the hospital, one's going to go to the morgue.
The morgue. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but it's funny. Just going back to Stella. So Stella's carefree. I've said this to her. Like, you know, one day a wrangler of boys are gonna pull up and she's gonna jump in and go to like Belmar and go to the beach, and then but that's why Ashlyn is you know, like 13 months away from being a black belt in Taekwondo.
Right.
So and the other thing I do say, Stella has a very expensive appetite. She's a surf and turf girl.
Oh, no.
So no high school dude's paying for that. And I mean, listen, she'll have a burger. I'm not saying she won't.
Right.
You know, she's like that bougie. But she goes on a date. That dude's paying for lobster.
Right.
So she should be home pretty quickly. And then Ashlyn can take care of herself. Ashlyn's a lunatic.
Right. And again, the personality.
In a good way.
Like, but you want that. Like, I don't, and this is, again, like, I'm hopeful that the inevitable changes that are going to come with, you know, puberty and adolescence and everything for Sarah, like that, I think we have a solid enough relationship foundation to weather that. And I've learned too, like, I know when to back off, when to give her space, when to put my foot down, you know, and, I just, you know what it is? My biggest fear, and this is like really soul bearing here, but like, I think my biggest fear, especially when it comes to like the boys and all that kind of stuff, is I don't want to put a wedge between her and I. Like, if I disapprove of somebody, I keep reminding myself, like, that's my opinion, like the Big Lebowski. That's like your opinion, man. Yeah. Like, that's not her. Like, and if she's the way I'm trying to think of it, and I mean, like, obviously this isn't going to be every guy. Like, there's going to be some that I may just be like, no fucking way. Like, but largely, like, if it's a mistake and I can tell it's going to be a mistake, it's still a mistake that she needs to make and come to on her own.
Have to.
Because if I'm the one that interferes with it, it's just like anything else. Like, I'm sure you, like, growing up, like, everybody that I know, like, that I hung out with, like, we didn't drink, right? But like, between 16 and 21, well before we were of legal age, like we had alcohol or whatever. It demystified it, right? The ones that seem to have like a real hardcore problem with it are the ones that like it's completely cut out and whatnot. And so I take that mentality to the dating thing, where like if I tell her, oh, don't go for this kind of guy, or don't let her do things like that, it's going to add an element of mystery to it. It's going to force her in a direction that the very direction that I'm trying to keep her out of.
No, absolutely. I think the whole like drinking thing is twofold. I wasn't a big drinker, and I'm still not a big drinker. Because my parents weren't big drinkers. Like my dad wasn't like a drink every night kind of guy. And also it wasn't like glorified. I never saw and I think that's where that comes in. And not that, I mean, when we have family out and, the girls see me drinking, it's not, but the whole like, and I don't mean glorifying
it's normalized.
Yeah, right. And being drunk is normalized. Like that's where like, and the best example I give you is I was having a cigar. I love cigars. And I was having a cigar and Stella said, it's really cool how the smoke comes out of your mouth. That was like 3 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They've only seen me smoke 2 cigars, I think, since then.
Oh, right.
Because I didn't want it like the cool, I was like, nope, that's it. Because I don't want, because I don't want them to think that it's cool. Like, and listen, was I probably overreacting? Yeah, I didn't lose it. I didn't even tell Lauren. I just stopped having a cigar when I was barbecuing, right? I stopped, I just, if we're hanging out in the backyard, I'll have one every once in a while. But I stopped going outside to have a cigar in the summer, in the spring and summer. I cut those out because she said it was cool. Now, I probably was overreacting, but like I said, it was just a decision I made for myself.
You didn't overreact to her or change her. Like you adjusted.
I was pushing them on a swing set.
Right.
I was just like, well,
right.
That's it. So I think that's a little bit with the drinking. And then you're right. And then the other side of that is not having it at all. And not that you should allow your kid to drink, but not, just being enclosed and in that bubble.
Right. And I guess that
not letting them have their own choice essentially.
You just put it way more eloquently than I did. Right. Like in that sense of like, I knew kids growing up, boys and girls, that like were absolutely not allowed to date. Dating was verboten, age 15, 16, 17. By the time they were, the parents think that they're ruling with an iron fist and the kids are there, but so many of them, it forced them to rebel. They're the ones that are sneaking out and worse. And this is another thing too, in terms of like, we mentioned independence, right? And wanting a certain element or degree of it and not having it be like the big dominant thing. I want Sarah to be self-sufficient. I want all 3 of my kids to be self-sufficient and independent. When they get to college, if we're too restrictive and just draconian with the policies and stuff, they're going to, when they have that freedom, and this is what I don't understand with people in terms of like that short-sightedness, right? Where they restrict. Yeah. It's not often in life where if you cut certain things out like completely that it works the way you want it to. Like it's everything in moderation, I guess.
Right.
Or maybe not everything in moderation, but everything with communication, explaining, hey, listen, I'm not allowing you to do this. Here's why. Yeah. And I think, again, just to kind of bring it full circle, like that's one of the things I respect so much about you and your wife and how you guys approach your parenting. Cause that's the biggest thing for me is,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's funny you bring that up because just recently, so the girl, so if you ask Stella right now, she doesn't know when she's getting a phone. And we don't know either. But she knows when she's going to be allowed to have social media. And I said, not before 15. And she actually told a friend that, I don't know, it came up a conversation. She goes, my friend is on like Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, and whatever it was. And not that I don't know them, I just forget which one she said. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, well, what did you say? And she goes, I told him I'm not gonna be able to be on it until I'm 15. So she knows. I mean, she knows she's not going on it. And, but anyway, the story I want to bring up is she was on FaceTime with a friend. She was practicing her saxophone, which I don't know why any friend would want to listen to her play the saxophone on, but I looked at it and it was some social media account that she was sharing her screen, and I muted it. I go, what's going on? She goes, she shared her screen. And I said, okay. I was like, I don't want you on social media. And she was like, but she just shared it. It wasn't anything bad. I'm like, listen, not everything on social media is bad. I said, but I don't need you seeing the bad. I don't need you seeing that. And I don't want you seeing that. I said, and it's a hill I'm going to die on. So we had a conversation about it. And one thing I pride myself in, and I say this to people, is that I'm trying to raise 2 rational humans. And the best, and I really do think Stella's rational. Like when she wanted to wear like a belly shirt, right? Because now you order clothes and you don't realize till it comes. You're
Oh,
like,
right.
oh, this is barometric, like, which stinks. But so she wanted to wear something. I was like, please no. And because maybe I think she's grown, like, so it did become more of a belly shirt than just something that, rested at her, like, below her waist. And I said, listen, I swear to God, this is a conversation we had when she was 9, I think it was, like late 9. And I said, listen, when you're 13, I'll have this argument with you. When you're 14, I'll have the argument. I said, when you're 15, I'm probably going to lose the argument.
Right.
I said, 16, absolutely. You're going to wear what you want. I said, I'm not having this argument with you when you're 9. And she said, okay. And she put it back. That was it. So I think that's, like you said, coming full circle, going back to the first thing we said, how we talk to our kids, like, I rationalized with her, like, there's going to come a point where you're going to have complete freedom to an extent, right? And it's just not now. It's definitely not now.
Right. And it's funny, with Sarah, I had the same situation in the complete reverse, where I noticed she started to develop more of an interest in fashion, right? It wasn't just like the children's place pants and shirts and shit.
I
and
know.
whatnot.
Walmart.
Right. Yeah. Right. And
those days were so much better.
But the problem was, and we had found this really great store that had a lot of really great clothes that were fashionable. And I remember, like, a lot of the stuff, like, I'm picking things out that I think are going to look good. And so much of it, again, not realizing like the size and everything, they were belly shirts on her, or, just revealing in that regard.
Yeah.
And she came out in one of them, and I looked and I was like, how did she walk in as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old at that point and walk out a 19 or 20-year-old? I was like, oh man. And I caught myself, because my initial instinct was like, yeah, no fucking way.
Right.
And I was like, no, we're gonna have a conversation about it. Didn't even get to the conversation because she didn't like it. She was very self-conscious, very uncomfortable. And so that led to, again, I'm not trying to beat it to death, but like communication. We wound up having such a long conversation about it in the car, on the way home, and then at home, about appropriateness, self-confidence, self-worth, communicating. Like I don't have a problem with the clothing, but you need to understand like what you're putting out there. Like, you may not understand, like, when it's more like, maybe not the belly shirts, but like the booty shorts and stuff like that. I'm like, you're sexualizing yourself, whether you realize it or not. And you're drawing.
Also, but how are they making those clothes?
Oh, well, that's right. That's a whole separate thing. And so it was probably one of the best discussions that we've had, because we talked about a lot about self-worth, self-image, right? So it's important to feel pretty. It's important to feel like you look good, but you also need to understand context and stuff. Yeah. And I have no fucking shame whatsoever. And I've told her this straight out of the gate. I was like, I don't ever want to fight with you over clothes. I will never fight with you over clothes, especially when you're a teenager. But just know, if I don't like something that you're going to wear, and you're going to wear it anyway, I'm wearing it too.
Right.
I don't care where you're going. And I said, you don't want to see this in whatever it is. I said, I'll find the size, and she knows, like, I've not done that with clothes before, but like, she knows it's not a bluff. And
she knows you're not bluffing.
Yeah. And and again, it just comes back to my philosophy of, I want them to have the experience so that they learn. Like, it's the difference between teaching at a kid and helping them actually learn, right? So like all the rote learning and shit, like just writing stuff on the board, I know my ass is so like,
I know. And I know we're trying to wrap it up.
Right. And so, like, it's just, to me, that's the best way. Experience is the best teacher. Yeah. And if they don't go through those things, like, I remember, again, Heather used to like get so aggravated, right? So this is the last one. I may get in trouble for this, but I'm okay with it. So one thing that I have prided myself on, 14 and a half years of parenting, not one time have I ever said, because I said so. Literally not once. That's Heather's default.
You're better than me.
It's the stubbornness. So that's why it's game recognizing game. I respect that in you, because it's a cop-out. And I said, I don't care how many times they ask why, I'm going to continue to give an answer, because there is always a suitable answer. And
that helps with the rationality, right?
Right.
Yeah, because you have a reason, not just because I said
so. And it's just one of those things. It's just like, when there's confrontation, because that is in essence a confrontation at that point. One, being a fucking stubborn Irishman, right? Like, I'm not going to lose this argument. So I'm just going to entrench myself. I'm not going to get mad. Like, I'm going to start to get more calm. Like, the more you're trying to push buttons, the calmer I'm going to get. You're not going to win this battle. And so when it came to those instances, and to be fair, like, it never did turn into but why? Like, I mean, there were some extended conversations, but they all ended amicably, and they were satisfied with the answers that they got. And so I hope that as we get to the teenage years, it's going to be the same type of, like, we've established that
because you
rapport.
communicate. Yeah, as long as it just, there's no reason for it to change, right? Unless something changed drastically.
Well, and that's just it. It could change, and that's why I have to just remind myself daily. Like, and this is again where Heather and Tim are having a lot, like they're butting heads because they're too much alike in some regards. And so, she's like, again, because I said so, and she's right. Like, she's the mom, like, and so, and Tim, but she doesn't realize like his innate nature as an adolescent is to push back against that, to rebel, and so I pick my spot. Like, it's, again,
AKA
it's
stay out of it.
Right. So I circle around from the back, and like, and we were just talking about this morning that like Heather's kind of taking the bad cop role. Like I'm still the disciplinarian.
Yeah.
If I get involved, they know they fucked up.
Okay.
And that's kind of
That's
where
good,
it's
yeah.
at. Like I'm the
That's good
closer
for both
with
of
it.
you. I mean,
Right. And that's just it. Like we've had to I had to divest her of the duties because it was too much stepping on each other's toes and just not.
Well, the best the best with Lauren is like if one of them says something, I'm like, you went and fucked up now because there's nothing I can do. Like, what are you, crazy? Like, and then Lauren goes to town.
I give Tim a lot of credit because he's 14 and it's tough. It's so I remember being 14. But and it's not like he doesn't fuck up because it happens. But I've explained to him, I said, listen, it's mostly him and Jackson. Like him and Sarah get along pretty well, but him and Jackson, I think, unfortunately, Tim views him almost as like a rival, maybe. Like,
is there a little bit
Jackson's a ball buster. Like you wouldn't believe. He knows how to put. I don't know if Stella's like this, but I see a similarity there. Like Jackson knows what to say to just like flip the switch.
No, Stella's not.
She's not instigator.
I don't want to say she's not that quick, like witty. She doesn't have that in her. She's not good. She doesn't go on the attack.
Good, because
Ashton will. She's different.
He just knows how to push Tim's buttons. And so the purpose of the story is to say that with Tim, I'm like, look, I understand. Like Jackson may try to play it off or whatever, but you can't bullshit a bullshitter. I should have a master's, maybe a PhD in it, right? Like I know exactly how the game's played. I played it a lot longer than either of you, so I know when he's full of shit. Yeah. I said, when you take it into your own hands, you remove me from the equation because now I can't help you because you've screwed it up. And it was something the other night, like, Heather snapped at him for something. It wasn't even his fault. And I saw him and I was like, please just don't. And he did it. He took a deep breath. She came at him again. And then I stepped in and I was in the office and I overheard this conversation between them. And from the office, I shouted out, I was like, I told him not to do that for this or this reason. And it diffused it. And I was proud of him because he didn't take the bait. Like, and that's the problem. Heather and Tim butting heads, Tim and Jackson and stuff. And so it's just, again, like, I just think it's important for us to recognize that they're people, right? They're children. They're not adults, clearly, but they still have the same emotions that we do. They still have shitty days. They still have all that.
Without the, 35 plus years of experience that we have, right? 40 plus years. So, I don't want to age you.
They don't. Well, no, listen, I just turned 41.
Oh, are we the same exact age?
No.
Yeah.
I was 83.
83, yeah.
Holy shit.
January of 83, yeah. I didn't realize that either.
March of 83.
Oh, nice.
Wow. Yeah, but it's funny. I mean, this is a whole, we're not even going to go down this rabbit hole, but like you've seen like me change from last year to this year or whatever. Like I wanted that. My whole purpose in doing this, the not even like the weight loss, it's more of a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
It's for longevity. It's so that I can be there for them. I want to go to bars with Sarah when she's in college, right? I want to be able to be.
So do my girl's Aunt Alexandra. Yeah. That's all she talks about.
Like we do father-daughter trips and father-son trips and stuff. Like I want to be able to do those things well into the 50s and everything like that, which is fun. Now I just got all.
No, but what's funny? They brought up that whole internal thing just because of the kick we're on right now, and I know we want to wrap this up. Although I told Lauren there's a chance I could be home at 3 a.m. And you know what's funny? This does kind of circle, not necessarily circle back, but it does go into like parenting and how like parenting when we're like how our parents did and how it's different, and obviously generational, it's different. But this is a good example of. I was listening to, and I don't know who it is, and I wish I knew who it was because it was one of those like clips from a podcast, and I didn't listen to the whole podcast. But it was this nutritionist talking about how, giving, and we do this. I'm not saying we don't. Our kids eat fast food. We've tried to cut out McDonald's because of this. She said, saying like, "Oh well, we ate that growing up, so of course they can eat it." And I say that all the time. To my wife, like, Laura, come on, like, look how we grew up and what we ate. Like, it's fine. This woman said, it's not what we ate. the McDonald's fries, and I don't know if you heard like the whole like thing recently in the last year with the McDonald's fries that they sprayed them with some chemical that they have to sit in like a warehouse for like 3 weeks, I think, before they're safe to be around, like and eat. But what this woman was saying was when we were in the 80s and early 90s, when we were growing up and we were eating McDonald's, the only ingredients in the fries were potatoes, salt, and like the animal fat that they fried them in.
Right.
And it was the animal fat that gave them that taste. And they said that oil, the fat, is too expensive. So it takes over 200 ingredients to get that flavor.
Right.
So it's not the same food we're eating, right? So going back to like how our parents raised us and how they were and like leaving us with like a bag of Fritos when we were like our kids' age now and for hours because they did, and just said, don't open the door. You know, it's not the same. It's completely different. It's in the same token of like, you know, the McDonald's fries, right? Those change over time and they're worse for you. So it's not like eating the same. So we're not drinking the same Kool-Aid. We're not doing all those things. It doesn't mean our parents did it wrong. It doesn't mean our parents were bad at it. My parents were great people, are great people. And they were wonderful parents because I'm everything I am is them, right? Or everything, you know, but it's just different. Like things change over time and it's like there's no barometer anymore. Like we have to make our own like lane.
Yeah, and that's what's wild about the era that we live in, right? It's almost an excess of access to information. Like people are just sort of like, I don't know, paralyzed by.
And you can throw social media into that, right? Like that's the biggest culprit of how it's different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, not that I'm making excuses. I'm not, you know, raking them over the coals, but like, you know, in the 80s, there wasn't as much information. It was also much more tradition oriented. And I can't speak to you, but if you grew up in New York, it's probably the same kind of thing. Like, you know, my parents grew up in the 50s. And so that was children are meant to be seen, not heard. You know, my dad is the oldest of 8. He had a job at like 12 or 13 or 14. Or
I didn't talk to my dad's friends. Like, those are my friends. Get out of here.
Right. Exactly. There was the adults, you know, and they did their thing and whatnot. And so like, I think every generation there's a chance for change. And, you know, clearly we're the products of our parents who had it different than we do and so on and so forth.
My father was born in a hut in a village in Greece.
Was he really? Oh,
yeah.
So, right. So
my father's first time in the hospital was when he got sick on December 4th.
No.
Yes, he was the first time he was a patient. I'm sorry. No, he had knee replacement. He had a triple bypass because they found it out for his knee replacement and that a double knee replacement. Right. So he's been a patient in the hospital for three times, and this last one he was a patient for like 45 days.
Right. Yeah, that was wild.
It was crazy. Yeah. Which is gonna be a focal point of the next book you're gonna write. I swear to God, it's gonna be good material.
Oh, it's definitely like I was picturing like the inspirational story and everything.
Forget about the inspiration. You're just gonna use it somewhere. Like even if it's like I'm telling you, you have to use it. Whatever you're writing, like just you're gonna throw. This will be like a part of it.
And thankfully, happy ending.
Yeah, he's good.
Not even an ending, which was
right. Yeah, not yet. But he's gonna tee it up next month.
Yeah. Well, oh man. Well, yeah, it's funny, right? When you mentioned the kids like not understanding certain things about being adults, I thought of the 4 lip outs. Like nobody can understand those putts, just missing, right? What do you call it the other day? Like it's brutal. It's life. Golf is life.
Oh, you mean the 4 par putts I looked at the other day? Yeah, I know. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. But no, man, listen, we could probably go on for another
hour. Go forever. Nobody wants to hear that.
I'm so glad that we got to do this. And this is honestly like one of the funnest aspects of having the podcast. Yeah. And like, it's tough because people are like, well, what's it about? And I'm like, this is what it's about.
It's a Seinfeld podcast.
It's about nothing.
Podcast about nothing.
Right. But, and that's
and
just
everything.
it. Like, I'm a people person and I can tell you are too. Like, it's just, I love having conversations like this.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much value. I mean, there was a lot, I think, that we gave people to chew on here.
I hope so. And I hope nobody's going away with this, like thinking we're just these 2 dads who were like gloating because at any point, like we might be doing it wrong. Like our kids could be screwed.
But we recognize that. So funny enough, when it was determined that I've mentioned this a bunch of times before on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So like Heather and I graduated with my master's. I think it was May 31st. June 1st, Heather and I went to Dublin to celebrate. So we took a trip to Ireland. Yeah. And we went to the Jameson Distillery, we went to the Guinness Brewery, we did all these places, right? And every day she was drinking less and less and less to the point the last night I lapped her. I had like 2 Guinnesses and she barely touched one. And I had a feeling, man, like something was not right. We got home 5 o'clock the next morning. She takes a pregnancy test.
Wow.
She was pregnant for, we had just started trying. It was funny enough, right? So, like weeks before that. And I'll never forget, we go to see the obstetrician and like, she's in tears. She's like, I was drinking and I'm pregnant and all this stuff. And the guy, she's like, oh, well, what were you drinking? And so she's like, Guinness and Jameson. He goes, they used to prescribe that back in the day.
I know, right? Seriously.
But it was one of those things where, we come back, she's pregnant, and Bloomberg, who was the mayor at the time, put out a hiring freeze. I hadn't gotten into the system yet, but I had the degree and everything. And 9 months later, Tim's about to join us, and I don't have a job. Like there was no way, there was nothing for me to do. And with Heather being in the corporate world, it just made more sense. I was like, listen, I can jump back into the classroom at any point. Like I'll do this for a year or two. We'll figure it out or whatever. And here I am 14 years later. I don't give Heather enough credit or shout outs on the podcast, but she's been my biggest supporter our entire time together. Like I don't want to get all choked up and emotional about it, but she was the one that believed in me with writing, with all of this stuff, whatever it happens to be. So it's really cool to be where I'm at now on that journey, because now I'm finally ready to like pursue that and see how it goes. Right. And it's just one of those things where, I don't know, you never know where life's going to take you. And I just appreciate the experiences that I've had and the people that I've gotten to meet, and I enjoy sharing that with everybody here. I just lost the train of thought. So when
which is amazing that it only happened twice, once with me and once with you.
when we finished, so when we had Tim, the college program that we had been a part with, they were like, listen, we want to support you guys. They did like a little like expose. So we were a part of a program called the Macaulay Honors College, and it takes place within the City University. So each campus is part of the program. It had started out right when Heather and I graduated high school. We were members of the first class ever. And so it was kind of a big deal that we were the first married couple. We were Timmy's the first, Macaulay baby, right. They say, whatever.
That's funny.
So they wanted to do something about that experience and about Heather going back to work and this whole thing. And so they talked about me with writing. They were like, oh, what if you started like a parenting blog? And I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought about it and I was horrified. Like I started the blog and I'm like, I don't fucking have anything to say. Who the fuck am I? Yeah. Like, I can't give parenting advice. I'm doing this as I'm learning. And even, a year in, 2 years, 10, 14 years in now, I don't feel,
no, I still don't know what I'm
credit
doing.
To speak about anything, like
every day forward is a day that we didn't have yesterday, right? Like, because it's a new day. Like we said, they're going to enter their teens soon. And I mean, God help us, but that's a whole new thing.
You may not be a big drinker yet. But
I know. Well, so wait, it's funny. I'll never forget this. This is a good one. I took Stella to like a indoor play thing, whatever. I think maybe we were with my friend Mike, who had a daughter like 2 months earlier than Stella. And this guy was there with a son. He's like, oh yeah, my wife's pregnant. He's like, it's a girl. Like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. If it's a girl, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bro, because you have a penis doesn't mean you know how to take care of a boy better. It's a baby. Like there's literally zero to do with it. It's a little human. That has nothing to do with it. Like I remember and this was 9.5 years ago. Like I don't know, she was like 1.5, and I remember that story. So I'm like, bro, none of us know what we're doing. You think this is a boy you're gonna know?
100%. Yeah. And at the end of the day, children are children. It's agreed. Like. And having sort of like and
they're all different.
Right, exactly. You need to be able to adjust and adapt to the individual, regardless of, boy, girl, or whatever. Yeah. But, and this is the perfect end cap, I think we could both agree. And I love all three of my kids equally. Yeah. But there's just something special about being a father to a girl. And you're lucky enough to have two of them.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah's enough for two. Like I'm good there in that regard. And for what it's worth, like you guys are doing a hell of a job, and you specifically as a dad, like you inspire me so much, because like I see like almost like a reflection, like some of the insecurities and concerns and stuff that I have are allayed by you, because I'm like, okay, these are the things that I'm doing. I'm not sure if they're right, but he's doing the same things. And look at Stella and Ashlyn, like, all
dude, right, it helps to bounce off and not be bashful and talk about things and just be honest and right and just self-aware, self-assess. And if you can't do that, like then that's why we have friends, right? I mean, you have to have that group of friends that you can tell them when you screwed up, or and just bounce. I'm lucky enough. I have a group of friends from middle school and my group of friends from high school, and then my family. So, it is really important, and that's all that we can hope to do. And I do pride myself on being just a girl dad. I really do. I really do. I mean, Kobe did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so.
Exactly. And right. There's nothing wrong, nothing different about it. Personally, I think it's something special. And again, like I love all three of my kids, 3 boys, 3 girls,
Of course.
mix, whatever.
Yeah,
it is,
no, that's never a
'cause
question.
It's different. But there's definitely something special. And you've got 2 special kids. I haven't gotten to interact with Ashlyn as much, so I don't want to throw her under the bus because of Stella.
No.
But
no, Ashley, I took her to urgent care the other day because she's not feeling well. And it took her like 45 seconds to explain that she had a headache. Like my head's like, it's like throbbing when I wake up, but she had no problem telling the doctor. Well, like she communicated the whole thing.
Right.
I put my head down, I go, it's a headache.
Right.
She has a headache. And she goes, it's more than a headache. It's throbbing.
right. Oh my God.
She wanted to say migraine, but she forgot migraine.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I literally put my head in my hands and I was like, it's doctor, it's a headache. She's
Right.
trying to say headache, but she talks too much.
No, but that's great. But again, right, you let them speak for themselves.
We do.
And I think
It's important. I want them to.
yeah, and I think that's important that we're there for them, we show up for them,
Yeah.
and we support them as best we can. Because like you said, each day is a new day, it's new information, it's new challenges, new rewards, and everything.
Yes,
and they go quick.
Yes, and without going off to another tangent, and hopefully we'll save this for another time, but we have to know when to lead them and then when to follow them. Right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think we're finally reaching that line in the sand of following
I
more.
know.
But you know what?
At least one of them can kick somebody's ass.
I was just gonna say that just means we need to do another podcast down
Yes.
the road to see where all the venting that's going to come down.
I'm curious to see how many people you can sucker into listening to us talk. I'm curious.
I have a funny feeling it's going to hit pretty well based on Heather's feedback in terms of like the better quote unquote better episodes or whatever. Like,
Oh, wow.
because
That's
of the authenticity. That's why I mean the kids have been talking about it. They're like, oh, is Coach Jon coming today? Like,
No
so,
way.
Yeah, no,
that's good. I'm glad Heather has confidence. Lauren has zero confidence. Lauren's going, who wants to hear you say anything? I'm like, I don't know, but Matt thinks it might happen.
Trust me, this was everything I envisioned it being and so much more, man. This was such a great, and I'm so sorry that I ate up like it's just about 3 a.m. now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Seriously. I don't have it. We're all good. Look at this. Nothing from her.
Not yet, because she knows you too well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I appreciate getting to know you. I appreciate. I wanted to finish with this for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of anybody who's supportive of me and my kids, my family, all of that or whatever. There is something a little more special when it's somebody who is a big believer in my kids. And there really is nobody that I can think of who has been there for us on the basketball front, just like giving life advice, whether it's Tim or any of them. No, man, it means a lot to me because you could tell that you're as invested in them and their success, like as we are, like, and that means a lot because you don't get that everywhere, and we're lucky to have a very small number of people that we can claim that, and you're one of them, and it means a lot to us.
I do appreciate that. I really, really do. And I've actually, because of this whole Taekwondo thing with Ashlyn, I said that to Master Sonny. And it was the first time I said that. And I, again, not that I get that all the time, but because I've done this for 22 years in youth coaching and AAU, I've gotten the, it's really important when somebody else cares about your kids. And I've gotten that, like what you've said. Not that I've gotten it a lot. I'm not saying that. But you saying it to me, I do want to share that with this Taekwondo thing, that I went up to Master Sonny. I was like, listen, I said, people have told me that before, and I wanted you to know, like, the effect you have on my child, like, means so much to you. And that was the first time as a dad that I was on the other side of that. That's why I want to bring it up. Right. And it was wild. Well, it was wild.
And funny enough, like, so that's where I was at, right? Whether it was teacher, coach, or other situations, I've always tried to show up for anybody and everybody. Yeah. There's nobody I want to show up more for than my kids. And to see someone else doing that too, like, I don't know, it's just really cool, man.
No, I appreciate it, brother.
This is so great.
No, this is awesome.
This is a lot of fun.
No, and maybe we'll do a drinking one next time or something.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm down.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to coach, teacher, girl dad, Jon Korellis for coming through. And thank you to everybody listening wherever and whenever you are.